film takes place at a small pier on the Australian coast, where a couple of tourists, Heather and Greg, arrive. Their goal is to go on an excursion that includes extreme cage diving to see sharks up close. Tucker, the captain of a local barge, known as a real sea dog with the nickname Captain Boomerang, appears on the horizon. He quickly realizes that the tourists have fallen behind the main group, and therefore no one knows where they are headed. After a brief introduction, the trio sets sail on Tucker's boat. On the way, the captain shares a story from his youth. Once, while surfing, he was attacked by a shark. He miraculously survived but was left with deep, ugly scars as a reminder of the encounter. At the dive site, Heather's overcome with panic, and Tucker tries to calm her down by singing a children's song about Turu the baby shark. Soon, the tourists put on their scuba gear and descend into a steel cage that protects them from the many sharks that swarm in these waters. After experiencing a storm of emotions and adrenaline, the couple rises to the surface. But as soon as they are above water, the captain unexpectedly stabs Greg and throws his body back into the sea, to be eaten by voracious predators. He decides to let Heather live. The story then shifts to Zephyr, a young woman who lives in a van and is passionate about surfing. At a local store, she encounters a guy in a business suit named Moses, whose car has stalled. He is looking for crocodiles to jumpstart his battery. Noticing Zephyr stealing candy, the guy jokingly threatens to turn her in to the shopkeeper if she doesn't help him with his car. The girl agrees and takes him to his car, helping him start the engine. Her eyes immediately fall on the surfboard lying in the trunk. Their shared passion for waves quickly turns into attraction, and that into a whirlwind romance right in her van, parked outside Moses' house. When she confesses that surfing has become her only purpose in life, the guy responds with a story about a special place where you can catch a perfect wave. At night, when Zephyr falls asleep, Moses goes home to make breakfast for her. But when he returns, he finds neither the van nor the girl. Meanwhile, Zephyr heads to the beach to check out his story about the secret spot. On the shore, she realizes that she has forgotten her fin key. Noticing a pickup truck parked nearby, Zephyr approaches to ask for the tool. She's rummaging in the back of the truck when the owner of the car returns, and it turns out to be Tucker. He hands her the key she needs and drives away without showing any interest in the girl. After finishing assembling her board, Zephyr receives a message from Moses. They agree on a new meeting, but suddenly the captain returns and catches up with her. He grabs the girl in a chokehold until she loses consciousness, then takes her surfboard to make it look like she drowned and hides her body in the trunk. Tucker returns to his barge, dragging his prey into the hold. Zephyr regains consciousness in a cabin where she is handcuffed to a bed. Opposite her is another captive, Heather. The girl calls for help, not realizing that their ship is already on the open sea and that no one but the maniac eating breakfast will hear them. Realizing that waiting for rescue is useless, Zephyr decides to act on her own. Her attempt to break the headboard fails, and she begins to look for any object to open the handcuffs. Her homeless childhood and time spent in a colony taught her such tricks. Meanwhile, Moses finds her abandoned van and later sees the car being towed away. The girl does not return, and contacting the police yields no results. Zephyr finds Heather's bra and takes the wire out of it. She tries to use it to open the handcuffs, but doesn't have time. Tucker enters the cabin with lunch. He notices the missing bra and starts making nasty comments. Zephyr distracts him with conversation, and when he leaves, she gets back to work. But suddenly Heather loses consciousness, and soon Zephyr also falls into darkness. Drugs have been mixed into the water. When she wakes, the girl finds herself chained to a chair on the deck. Heather is suspended from a crane in a harness. Tucker sets up an old video camera and gives a pompous speech about the gods of the deep sea, pretending to be a fan of Lovecraft. He cuts off a strand of Heather's hair and begins the ritual. He lifts Heather with the crane and lowers her overboard, filming as sharks tear the girl to pieces. When Zephyr is returned to the hold, she scratches Heather's name on the wall next to the other victims with her fingernails.
the captain has already managed to paint over some of the names. Meanwhile, Tucker celebrates in his cabin, dancing in his bathrobe and drinking wine. He glues Heather's lock of hair to a fish hook and attaches it to a taped recording of her death. He already has a whole collection of such tapes. In the morning, he visits the captive to feed her. The captain responds to her insult with indifference, advising her to use the bucket for her verbal outbursts. After he leaves, Zephyr comes up with a plan. She breaks the plastic handle off the bucket, turning it into a weapon. In the evening, Tucker, holding a syringe with a sleeping pill, goes down to the hold. Zephyr pretends to be asleep and strikes him with her improvised weapon. The man falls, hits his head, and loses consciousness. The girl quickly takes the keys from his pocket and removes the handcuffs. But when she tries to find the key to the ship, the captain regains consciousness. A chase begins. Reaching the wheelhouse, Zephyr tries to call for help on the radio, but there is no signal. The sleeping pill administered by the maniac begins to take effect. The lights of a tourist boat appear before her eyes, but she does not have time to send a signal. Tucker appears. In desperation, the girl grabs his old video camera and throws it overboard, knowing how valuable it is to the killer. In response, he jumps into the water after her. Due to the effects of the drug, she loses strength and Tucker pulls her back with a gaff. Meanwhile, Moses, who has not forgotten about the girl, finds her broken board and calls in the rescue team. Although the search is unsuccessful, looking through the camera recordings, he notices Tucker's pickup truck and realizes that he's involved. He calls the captain, but he's unavailable. While Tucker is buying a new camera at a flea market, Moses arrives at his ship. Hearing strange noises from the hold, he climbs inside and finds Zephyr captive. Instead of freeing her, the guy runs upstairs to call the police. But the captain has returned and is waiting for him in the cabin. A fight ensues. Tucker, with his strength and madness, gains the upper hand and wounds the guy with a hook. However, Moses is about to strangle the villain when he is suddenly struck on the head by the captain's neighbor at the pier. Hearing Zephyr screams, he realizes he has done something stupid, but it is too late. Tucker kills him, then he takes the ship out to the open sea. Waking up nearby, Zephyr and Moses realize that the situation is hopeless. The captain decides to put on a new show. He lifts the guy with a crane, preparing him for the sharks, and leaves the girl as a spectator. Zephyr begs to replace the victim with herself, but Tucker contemptuously refuses. Lowering Moses into the water, he films the sharks circling around him. However, the predators soon lose interest. Then the captain stabs him several times with a knife, and the blood attracts the sharks again. A rescue helicopter appears on the horizon, and Tucker is forced to interrupt the show. He pulls Moses onto the deck and takes both prisoners down to the hold. Seeing her loved one bleeding to death, Zephyr decides to free herself at all costs. She breaks her finger, but her hand still won't fit through the handcuffs. Then she bites off her finger completely. When Tucker returns, he finds a bloody finger under the blanket, and Zephyr herself is already free. She locks him in the hold and starts the boat, heading for the shore. But the maniac gets out and turns off the electricity. The final battle begins. Zephyr uses a frying pan as a shield and a knife as a weapon, managing to knock the killer unconscious again. She jumps overboard and swims to the beach, but Tucker rushes after her in a boat. When she reaches the shore, she barely has time to catch her breath before he grabs her again. The girl is returned to the ship and hung up as a sacrifice. The maniac prepares to film another show, but suddenly a huge shark appears from the depths, the largest he has ever seen. He lowers Zephyr into the water, filming her. The girl tries to not move when another smaller shark appears nearby. Tucker drives it away with a gaff, but it takes the weapon with it. Zephyr grabs it and tries to climb up. The maniac scares her with a scream and she falls into the water. Under the boat, she is met by the same giant shark with a scar on its side, but it is not interested in the motionless victim and swims away. Zephyr climbs aboard, grabs the harpoon, and shoots the captain. He falls overboard and tries to climb back in, but at that moment, the giant shark grabs him and drags him into the depths. The new camera captures Tucker's last moments. Zephyr also nearly dies. Her leg gets caught in a rope, but she frees herself and returns to the boat where she tries to revive Moses. A tourist boat appears on the horizon and Zephyr uses a flare to signal for help. When the ship changes course towards them, Zephyr goes down to the wounded man and confesses that now, besides surfing, there's Moses in her life. The guy opens his eyes, and that's where the story ends.